Hello everybody, welcome to the Igloo commentary from the season 22nd, round 2nd group J, where Łukasz playing as black and white Pietro have clashed. As you can see on the graph, that was a particularly bloody game where both sides have committed some major mistakes. The last one was played by white and it proved to be so big that he couldn't have recovered it eventually. Let us see what exactly have happened here. As we can see, black has chosen an influential Joseki leading for a rapid expansion of his lower zone by creating a large wall in this part of the board. While from his side, he has chosen a more aggressive outcome, which is not my favorite one actually. I would probably prefer to play like this. That's a modern Joseki, which usually is finished like this. It is considered as an equal position for both parts, and right now white can just play some tenuki. Right now a weak point is left behind in white's shape, which is played improperly by white, as the right way to play here would be to make an Atari and either ignore these two stones and play another part of the board, or continue by creating some white shape on the board. The difference between these two positions is like right now this group is entirely safe. It already has two eyes and there is no way to kill it, and sacrificing the stones doesn't look like a major loss comparing to the situation over here when these two stones are already lost and there is no way to rescue them as for now. And these stones, they seem to be heavier, and if black didn't play this stone, which looks senseless, as black gets nothing here and white gets a connection for nothing, without this exchange white's shape would be probably less stable and less comfortable from white's perspective. So black here actually supports his opponent in order to stabilize his weak position. Right now AI prefers to play this connection, as black can still extend himself, and perhaps in future he could use this cut point in some way. If white connects here immediately, black can play such a hane, and this whole zone looks a little bit over concentrated from white's perspective, as there are just too many stones, which are creating too less influence or territory. But okay, the game became again more or less even. Black is playing some Yose move perhaps. Okay, this is like a Joseki extension, but I personally would prefer to play here, as there is simply more space to extend yourself over here or here, and this zone is not as important as upper and left sides are. And in this way white gets center, which is used in a nice way. So right now white begins some kind of a counter offensive, let us say like this, and again he attacks Sansan. Black this time chooses another Joseki. Perhaps it's better to play this move first, but it doesn't really change the situation. And here I understand that black prefers to keep the white group without the eye zone, but for me it would be preferable to play this stone firstly, as this honey looks a little bit irritating. This shape looks vulnerable right now, and this stone still doesn't connect this group entirely. Actually, AI suggests such a move in order to get a little bit more territory on the right part of the board. But still, I would probably prefer to play like this, even if white plays here, which I consider like rather a weak move. Black can just extend himself in this direction and the game continues. Right now, white seems to get some initiative in the game, although black from the other side gets an opportunity to make a cut. So that was the eventual aim of this stone at S10. Anyway, white could probably play something like here, sacrifice these 4 stones, and I would probably consider making some cuts here. I don't know if this works already, but the point is to sacrifice this in order to get some advantage over the central zone, which could eventually lead to some major attack on these upper stones and creating some strength, some thickness, which would be exploited to create some moil on this quarter, which eventually would probably lead to the major advantage comparing with this sacrifice. But okay, white engages in this fight, and here black has made first fatal mistake, as the only proper way is to play like here in order to avoid the shortage of liberties. In this way, in this case, black still has an opportunity to connect himself like here or here, but the problem is white can already create a living shape over here. If we play like here, obviously white can still live, but right now black can significantly weaken the central group, and the compensation for letting this group live would be way bigger, and black could easily dominate the central right part of the board. Right now it seems like white is alive with mostly all of his stones, and not only the central influence of the black is mostly destroyed, but also this whole black group becomes pretty vulnerable as it is cut from its main source of strength. This group is left alone with irritating edgy on R14 and surrounding white stones from this and this side. So black needs desperately to run in the central direction, and this running looks pretty uncomfortable from his point of view. Okay, black still tries to counterattack, but white gets another advantage by a sacrifice, as right now black is even weaker, so still tables are turning for white. Perhaps in this case black should play like here and even sacrifice these 2 stones in order to settle himself in some way on the upper part of the board. Perhaps this game is still playable. Right now black is trying to survive with everything, and such strategy looks pretty riskful, as the black space is becoming smaller and smaller, and Only now black gets enough space to enlarge himself. From the other side, white created a bigger potential on the upper side. Perhaps it's not very influential, but the territory in the corner looks expanded, so result is eventually pretty even. I'm not exactly sure if white could have found some more efficient way of attacking this group. Perhaps white could have already played something like this in order to push black toward the center and to make his upper side a little bit bigger. Perhaps that would be the better approach. As you can see that the stone on M13 has only one purpose, which is to attack the black group. But if this group is alive, these stones are not surrounding any bunch of territory, so they are somehow useless in this position. And the question is, what's the point of this move? Because it doesn't really threatens black with any cut, as there is no cutting point over here or here. Black can easily expand himself towards the center, and beside of this, white creates a classically bad shape, which is an empty triangle, which should be as a rule be avoided. White doesn't really want to play such shapes which involve a lot of stones and doesn't create any territory. So I would probably play something like here. I would let the black live in this corner, or I would let him just continue his escape, as the white group is basically alive, and the only problem for white is the lower zone of influence of black, which can be balanced probably by creating a contradictive zone of influence on the left part of the board. It might be probably become a little bit bigger if white plays this properly. Another way of playing is just some aggressive attack on this lower part, which would also diminish the zone of influence, and which would be way more aggressive. It would gain way more initiative for white rather than this move, which is totally in Gote. So black eventually gets center and he makes San, and if I have to be honest, I don't really understand this move, because if I was black, I would probably consider just to playing like this, because even if white plays like here, black can still probably get through this fortification, and white simply doesn't have enough stones in this zone in order to cut all his way of escapes. So I believe that black could have played riskier. White gets back to Joseki. And the question is, do we really need this exchange? Perhaps black would prefer to create some influence over here. Perhaps he would prefer to extend himself here. But right now, white should probably ignore these two lone stones and play here or in any other part of the board, as this move looks unnecessary. If black tries to connect himself and to treat in any way to white, he can easily surround these three stones, which have no direct way of escapement. if he tries to play something like this, white can either play in that or perhaps even in that way. Even if black goes away, it is still probably pretty much playable, as white gets center and white can invade perhaps even here. So the game still continues. And in this way black gets center and his lower zone becomes even bigger, while white tries to expand his left side. Black invades, okay, and white's left corner is totally destroyed. And if several moves earlier it was the white who was holding the upper hand on this part of the board, right now it is black who is currently dominating. And the problem is that black manages to cut his opponent, and white right now needs either to kill these 4 cutting stones or he needs to create an independent local life. As these stones don't look very stable, the best way would be probably just to kill them. But the problem is white makes probably the most fatal mistake of this game, as he absolutely needs to prevent this cutting point. This move doesn't recompensate this fatal cut in any way, as all white stones right now are cut from each other, and black should just keep this cut, because in any liberty race between this and this group, black will most probably win. So after this mistake, white was basically unable to recover his loss, and all what he could do was just to ignore this cutting stone, and probably either to secure his connection in, I don't know, any way like this or even like this, or just to counterattack and play something like here. Although this strategy is also pretty risky, because the cutting point still remains here and white still doesn't seem like he has enough space here to create an independent life. So probably black is already in a position to win. But here there was a series of mistakes from black side, as he could probably be cut like somewhere over here. And right now this exchange makes the game probably even again. Still, white can play in the weak point of this shape. Black should have connected himself like here. And if white plays here, it seems like black cannot avoid this cut. Right now, white has chosen a core, which is a 1000 point core, and black will not ignore it in any way, especially after such kind of call threats. Probably the only worthy call threat was playing something like this, because right now it looks like these white stones are in position to kill the black group again. So probably the game would be still playable after such an exchange, but here white gets nothing, as we see, especially that he doesn't even continue this threat. Instead of this, he tries to rescue whatever was left from his collapsing zone of influence, but right now it's way too late. White is unable to create any life either for this or this group, and eventually he resigns as he has lost the whole lower part of the board. So as we see, the game was pretty even for 100 and for more than 100 moves, and both players were in a position to gain an advantage. That was probably the first minor mistake, both from white and black sides, so the game was still pretty even. Although none of the players was able to create a stable advantage which could not be recovered by the opponent. As we see, the game was still even and none of the players could prevail until this moment. That was, as we see, that was the deciding point of the game, because after such move the chances would be still pretty even, I believe. White gets the last part of the board, black still maintains at least some part of the lower part of the Goban. There is no weak group most probably, and the game would be decided in Yose. But after this, black was way too strong, and there was no other way, perhaps except this mistake in Tesuji, in order to change the fate of the game. After this cutting, after this co-fight, the game was over. So there was no major doctrinal or strategic mistakes. Both players were playing more or less correctly, except these fatal Tesuji mistakes, which are pure counting mistakes. So the only advice, the most important advice after this game is just to make Tsumego Tesujis to improve your counting abilities, which will enable you, which will support you in stabilizing your positions and maintaining your advantage, your positions until the end of the game. Otherwise the points will be destroyed in much too easy way, like here. As we see, black cutting points are better for black rather than white, and white also doesn't see the weak point of the shape, which could change the fate of the game at its very end. But here some mixture of skill and luck worked in black favor, and that was him who eventually enjoyed the victory. But both players have played a decent fight, and from my side that's everything for now. I hope that you appreciate the commentary, that you enjoy it, and if you want to contact me, feel free to do it. Bye.